Listen carefully. This is the truth no one dares to say out loud. People are not mad because you did something wrong. They're mad because you finally stopped explaining. You stopped apologizing. You stopped begging for their approval. You chose distance. You chose silence. You chose yourself. Because the moment you stop needing them, they realize they no longer have control over you. Let them whisper. Let them rage. Because the most dangerous woman in the room is the one who is unfazed. The one who has mastered the art of not giving a damn. And darling, that woman is you. When you create distance from people, situations, and noise that no longer serve your peace, you are not showing weakness. You are showing unmatched strength. Distance is not escape, it's elevation. It's the quiet decision to no longer participate in the drama that drains you, the chaos that confuses you, or the patterns that keep you small. It's the refusal to be a pawn in someone else's emotional game. You see, in this world, most people thrive on your attention. They need your presence to validate their worth. When you stop showing up for their endless demands, when you stop picking up every call, replying to every late night message, attending every meaningless gathering, they feel the shift. And that shift drives them insane. Because suddenly, they have to face their own emptiness without your energy filling their void. Think about it. Have you ever left a group chat silent for a day? Have you ever not replied to that person who always checks on you only when they need something? What happened? They panicked. They double texted. They sent question marks. Are you okay? Why are you ignoring me? They don't miss you. They miss the version of you that always made them feel important. They miss the old you who couldn't bear the discomfort of distance, who feared being misunderstood. But now, you don't fear that. You welcome the misunderstanding. You let them create their own stories. Because you've realized that your mental health, your peace, and your energy are worth more than satisfying someone's ego. Look at your workplace. When you choose to set boundaries, when you decide not to answer work calls after hours, not to join pointless office gossip, not to stay late just to please the boss, what happens? People call you difficult. They say you've changed. Yes, you have changed. You've learned that no job, no title, no paycheck is worth sacrificing your well-being. You've learned that when you create professional distance, you force people to respect your time. Because the one who is always available is the one who is always taken for granted. But the one who makes herself rare, oh, she becomes valuable, irreplaceable. In relationships, the power of distance is even greater. Have you ever stepped back from someone you loved deeply? Someone who took your kindness for weakness, your care for granted. The moment you stopped calling, stopped checking, stopped begging for attention, the moment you gave space, they woke up. Where are you? Why are you so cold? They felt it, didn't they? Because you no longer fed their need for control. You no longer allowed their mood to dictate your happiness. Distance exposed the truth they tried to hide. They needed you more than you ever needed them. Even in family life, distance speaks volumes. There's always that one relative, that toxic family member who loves to pull you into their drama. When you stop picking up their calls, when you skip that family gathering full of fake smiles and biting words, what happens? They say, you've become selfish. You've become aware. You've learned that blood is not an excuse for abuse. Distance is your shield, your quiet rebellion against years of tolerated disrespect. It's how you break generational patterns of guilt and obligation. And what about friendships? The moment you choose distance from that friend who only calls when they need something, money, a favor, you instantly see who they really are. When you no longer offer endless listening, endless support without return, they vanish. They were never friends. They were users. Distance cleared the fog, didn't it? It gave you clarity, strength, freedom. Even with your own mind, distance is power. Have you noticed how stepping away from social media, turning off the screen, sitting in silence, restores your confidence? You stop comparing yourself to filtered lives. Stop chasing someone else's timeline. Stop feeling behind. You find yourself again in the space of distance. Distance is not running away. Distance is the silent scream that says, I matter. My peace matters. My time matters. It is the quiet sword of queens who rule without noise. It is the strongest thing a woman can wear. Not perfume, not jewelry, not beauty, but distance. When you choose it, you don't shrink. You rise. You intimidate not because you speak loudly, but because you speak rarely. You intimidate not because you speak loudly, but because you speak rarely. And those who truly value you, they adjust. The rest fade. And that is the beauty of distance. It cleans your life without lifting a finger. They hate what they can't influence because control is the only language some people understand. The moment they realize you are no longer moved by their words, their moods, their opinions, they panic. They cannot stand the idea that you are no longer bending, twisting, shrinking yourself to fit into their version of who you should be. This world is full of people who feed on influence. They love to shape you, mold you, guide you. Sometimes softly, sometimes with manipulation, sometimes with kindness, laced with control. But when you become unshakable, when you start saying no without guilt, when your silence becomes your response, they burn with confusion and rage. Because what they can't influence, they cannot predict. And what they cannot predict, they fear. Think of the friend who always needed you to agree with her plans. The one who would sulk if you said no to a party or refuse to rearrange your schedule for her convenience. The first time you said, I can't make it, without offering an excuse, remember her face? Shock. Disbelief. What do you mean you can't come? You always come. Exactly. You always came, you always bent, until you didn't. Until you realized your life is not a string of favors for people who never ask what you want. The minute you broke that pattern, she grew distant. Not because you wronged her, but because you could no longer be controlled. Look at relationships, the romantic ones. When you finally stop chasing a man who gives you breadcrumbs of attention, when you stop texting first, stop begging to be noticed, stop twisting yourself into the woman you think he wants, you shift the whole game. Suddenly, you are not desperate, you are not easy. You are mystery, distance, power. And that terrifies him. Because a woman who is not desperate for a reply, for affection, for approval, is the woman no man can easily play. The moment you reclaim your self-worth, they either rise to meet you or they fall away. But they never remain the same. Because men love to influence, but they fear what they cannot sway. Even your family does this. Maybe there's that aunt, that cousin, that sister who always felt entitled to your time, your money, your emotional energy. When you stopped saying yes to every unreasonable request, when you finally said, I'm not available, they got angry, didn't they? They threw guilt like daggers. How can you do this to us? Family always helps family. But the truth is, family has boundaries too. And when you set yours, They hated it. Not because you stopped caring, but because they could no longer influence your decisions. At work, this pattern plays out all the time. When you refuse to take on extra tasks without pay, when you stop replying to emails after hours, when you dare to say, "This is not my responsibility." Watch how managers and co-workers react. They label you as difficult, not a team player, because you've shattered the silent agreement that they can exploit your time and energy forever. They hate that they can't make you feel guilty for putting your own life first. You are no longer under their thumb. You've broken free. Even strangers on social media try this. When you post something bold, your opinion, your truth, and you don't flinch at the hate comments, at the unsolicited advice, at the attempts to shame you, you become dangerous. Because the crowd feeds on influence. They want you to apologize, to soften, to take it down, to doubt yourself. But when you leave that post up, when you own your voice without fear, they rage, they mock, they project, but secretly, they envy your courage, because deep down, they wish they could live that free. You even do this with your own mind. When your old fears, your old doubts whisper, "You can't do this." And you finally answer, "Watch me." Those inner voices lose their power. They can't influence you anymore. They shrink, you rise. This is what happens when you become untouchable from the inside out. Everything that once held you back, everything that once shaped your choices, loses its grip. And the world cannot stand it. Because you have become the one thing they can't control. A woman who thinks, feels, chooses, and lives for herself. Caring less is not arrogance. It is the loudest, most graceful form of self-respect this noisy world has ever seen. We've been raised to believe that the more you care, the more you chase, the more you break yourself to make others comfortable, the kinder, the better, the more good you are. But here's the harsh truth that nobody teaches you growing up. Caring too much for things that don't care back is how you kill your soul quietly. It's how you hand over your peace, your time, your joy to people who never deserved them in the first place. When you begin to care less, not about life, not about dreams, not about passion, but about things that drain you, disrespect you, belittle you, that is not arrogance. That is knowing your worth. Think about the friend who loves to complain. Every time you meet, it's drama, gossip, sadness, negativity. You listened for years, nodding, supporting, carrying her emotional baggage like it was your duty. But one day you stopped replying with long paragraphs. You stopped caring so deeply about fixing problems that were never yours. What happened? She said you've changed. She said you don't care anymore. And she was right. You don't. Because you realized your mind is not a trash bin for other people's chaos. Because you finally understood that protecting your peace is not cruelty, it is survival. In love, this lesson hits hardest. When you cared too much for the man who gave too little, when you answered every text, adjusted your life to make him happy, forgave every careless word, where did it leave you? Tired. Less about what he thinks. Less about his approval. Less about his mixed signals. You felt the weight drop. You smiled without him. You slept without overthinking. You laughed without needing permission. And he noticed. Suddenly, he chased. Suddenly, your distance became attractive. But you see, this is not arrogance. This is the quiet power of self-respect, whispering, I am not here to beg for love. I am love. Even in the office, this shift changes everything. When you stop caring too much about impressing the boss who never notices, about pleasing co-workers who only gossip behind your back, about the never-ending race for promotions you don't even want, you work better. You breathe easier. You do your job with grace but without desperation. And guess what happens? They notice you more. Because the person who doesn't crave approval always shines brighter than the one who begs for it. When you care less about being liked and more about being real, you become unforgettable. Family makes this lesson harder. They say blood is everything. They say you must always care, always give, always sacrifice. But what happens when you stop rushing to every family drama? When you stop lending money to the cousin who never repays? Stop attending gatherings that leave you feeling worse than before? They call you arrogant. They call you selfish. But you have learned that self-respect is not selfishness. It is refusing to die slowly under the weight of other people's problems. It is the quiet decision to matter to yourself, even if no one else understands. Look at your own habits. Once you cared too much about how you looked to strangers. You dressed for their approval, spoke for their applause, lived for their judgment. But the day you walked out of the house with no makeup, hair in a bun, wearing what felt good, not what impressed, you felt freedom. And maybe someone stared, maybe someone judged, but for the first time you didn't care, you didn't shrink, you smiled anyway, because caring less about their eyes meant caring more about your soul. Even with your dreams, this truth stands. You used to care about every failure, every rejection, it broke you, made you doubt, made you beg life for an easy path. But the day you cared less about the world's timeline and more about your own pace, everything changed. You stopped comparing. You started creating. You breathed again. And slowly, silently, success began to chase you. Not because you begged for it, but because you respected yourself enough to not need constant proof. Caring less is not the shield of the arrogant. It is the crown of the self-aware. It is the silent rebellion against a world that profits from your insecurity. It is the beautiful truth that says, I matter. My energy matters. My joy matters. And if you think that's arrogance, so be it. Not responding is not weakness. It's not fear. It's not running away. It's the loudest, clearest message a person can ever give without saying a single word. Silence is not empty. It is loaded with power, with grace, with dignity. The world has conditioned you to believe that you must always react, always explain, always defend. But you don't. You never have to perform for those who do not deserve your energy. The most dangerous move you can make is to choose peace when chaos wants you to break. The moment you don't respond, they hear it louder than any scream. Remember that friend who betrayed your trust? The one who gossiped about you behind your back but smiled to your face? When you discovered the truth, everything inside you wanted to confront her, to shout, to demand an explanation, but you didn't. As you went, you didn't text, you didn't call, you simply withdrew. Your silence cut sharper than any words could. Because deep down, people expect a reaction. When you give them none, you steal the attention they crave. She sat in her guilt, replaying the scenes, wondering why you didn't chase, why you didn't fight for a friendship she already broke. That's the message. Not responding tells them, you are too whole to break. Think about relationships. The man who played with your feelings, who thought you'd always answer, always forgive, always stay. When he ghosted you and suddenly texted after weeks, hoping to find you waiting, you chose not to reply. You didn't send a bitter paragraph. You didn't beg for closure. You gave silence. And that silence screamed, I am not waiting. I have moved on. You lost access to me. That text he sent, he read it 10 times, waiting for your reply that never came. Because a woman who does not respond is a woman who is no longer chained to expectation. Even at work, this power shines. When colleagues gossip, when bosses throw unfair criticism, when office politics swirl, you can speak back, argue, defend yourself, but when you don't respond, when you keep your focus, when you stay unbothered, they wonder what you know that they don't. Your calm unnerves them. Your quiet dignity confuses them. Because not responding is control. It says, your words do not touch me. I do not owe you my energy. They are left powerless, unable to pull you into their chaos. Family teaches this lesson too. Maybe you face relatives who question your choices, who shame your dreams, who measure your worth by their outdated beliefs. Once you explained yourself. Once you argued your right to live your own way. But one day you stopped. You smiled. You said nothing. And in that moment you were free. Because silence says, I don't need your approval to exist. That dinner table, once loud with criticism, suddenly felt uncomfortable because you gave them nothing to fight against. And they heard the message loud and clear. Even online, silence can be your sword. When haters comment, when trolls poke and provoke, they want your rage, your pain, your weakness. But when you don't reply, when you scroll past and go on living, they choke on their own words. Because what they cannot disturb, they cannot defeat. You show them that their noise is powerless against your peace, and soon they move on, searching for someone easier to break. You are not that person anymore. But this power isn't just for others. It's for your own mind. How many times have your fears whispered lies at 2 a.m.? You're not good enough. You'll fail. You'll be rejected. And you used to answer them, argue, panic, overthink. But not now. Now you stay quiet. Now you smile at fear and say nothing. And that silence inside is your victory. It says, I hear you, but I do not obey you anymore. The thoughts lose their grip because even your own mind cannot rule you without your response. Not responding is not cowardice. It is the roar of the wise. It is the thunder of the strong. It is the quiet revolution of the soul that knows its worth, its peace, its purpose. They will provoke you, tempt you, bait you to break. But you won't. You are untouchable in your silence. And that silence becomes the loudest message they will ever hear. A woman who doesn't chase is feared. Not because she's cold or cruel, but because she has mastered the rare art of knowing her worth. This world has taught women to run, to prove, to beg for attention, for love, for validation. But the woman who refuses to chase breaks this pattern like thunder in a silent sky. She walks away when they expect her to run. She chooses herself when they think she will choose them. And that terrifies them. Because people don't know what to do with a woman who needs no one to complete her. Think of that man who thought you'd wait forever. He ghosted you, played games, thought you'd blow up his phone with desperate texts. But when you didn't call, when you didn't ask where he'd gone, when you simply lived your life, He panicked. Because every man knows this truth deep in his soul. The woman who doesn't chase is the one who cannot be controlled. She is the question that haunts them. Why isn't she trying to get me back? Why is she so peaceful without me? And that silent question keeps them awake longer than any love letter ever could. In friendships, too, this power shines. You used to be the one who planned the calls, the meetups, the birthdays. You cared too much. Until one day you stopped. You let the silence stretch. You let them reach out or not. You did not beg to be included. You did not chase to be remembered. And slowly, they noticed. They felt the absence of your energy, your laughter, your care. Because a woman who doesn't chase teaches the world that her time is not cheap, that her presence is not free. She becomes valuable in her distance. They fear losing her because they cannot predict her anymore. Even at work, this lesson plays out. You used to jump for every opportunity, fight for every recognition, bend for every expectation. But then you changed. You work silently. Let your results speak. Let your worth shine without noise. You stop trying to impress those who never truly saw you, and suddenly they respected you more. Hold the power of choice, and that makes you untouchable. In family life, this is hard but necessary. Maybe they expect you to marry by a certain age, have children, live life according to their script. They push, they hint, they pressure. But you don't bend. You don't argue. You don't chase their approval or meet their demands to keep peace. You simply live on your terms. And that silence scares them more than rebellion ever could. Because the woman who doesn't chase tradition, who writes her own destiny, is the one they cannot shame, cannot guilt, cannot break. She becomes a force, not a follower. Even strangers feel this energy. Walk into a room with quiet confidence, no desire to be seen or wanted, and watch the eyes turn. Because the woman who doesn't chase attention gets the most of it. The one who smiles for herself, who dresses for herself, who lives for herself, creates a mystery they can't solve. They whisper, they guess, they wonder, but they cannot touch her certainty. She walks alone, but never lonely. She owns every step, and that ownership is feared. In your dreams, this matters too. Once you chased deadlines, chased perfection, chased success on the world's terms. But you woke up, you realized you don't need to chase dreams that are not yours. You paused, you breathed, you moved at your pace, by your fire. And slowly, what you stopped chasing began to chase you. Opportunities, ideas, inspiration. They came because you were no longer desperate. You were complete before they arrived. The woman who doesn't chase is free. Free from fear, from need, from expectation. And this freedom makes her dangerous in the most beautiful way. Because no one can predict a woman who needs no one. No one can control a soul that runs for no one. She is rare. She is untamed. And the world does not know what to do with her strength. And here's the truth that will burn in the mind of every soul who hears this. A woman who doesn't chase is not cruel, she is not bitter, she is not broken. She is complete. A woman who chooses her peace over chaos, her self-respect over validation, her silence over drama, becomes the rarest force this world has ever seen. And what is rare is feared. What is whole cannot be hunted. Remember this. Diamonds don't run after buyers. The crown doesn't go chasing the king. The sun does not beg the earth to revolve around it. It simply shines. And the world turns because of its presence. Let the world wonder. Let them sit in confusion. When you stop explaining, stop proving, stop justifying why you are not available, not interested, not tolerating what no longer serves you. Because your distance, your detachment, your unbothered grace speaks the language of the strong. There is a reason why lions don't roar every minute. They roam with silence, with calm, because they know no one questions the king. So too must you carry this quiet certainty that does not need noise to prove itself. They will call you arrogant because you stop chasing. Let them. They will call you selfish because you chose yourself. Let them. Because the truth is simple. You are not here to be understood by those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You are not here to make small minds feel comfortable. You are not here to dance for applause. You are here to rise, to build, to glow. And sometimes rising means being unseen, unbothered, untouchable. You see, a woman who stops chasing begins attracting. When you step back from begging to be chosen, you become the chooser. When you stop calling, texting, proving, you become the mystery they cannot solve. You become the prize they thought they didn't need until you are no longer reachable. And that, my dear, is the moment when tables turn. That is when the hunted becomes the hunter in spirit. That is when your silence becomes the loudest message they will ever receive. Never explain why you distance yourself from those who played you, doubted you, used you. Let them sit with the consequences of losing you. Let them feel the absence they created. Because when you disappear from the spaces you once filled with love, energy, loyalty, they will notice. Oh, they will notice. The warmth is gone, the support is gone, the light is gone, and darkness is the only thing they have left to sit with. You don't have to curse them. You don't have to wish them harm. You just have to move on. And that will be the loudest punishment. This is why the woman who doesn't chase holds the real power. Because she knows what's meant for her will never need to be begged for. What's real will flow without force. And what is not real will break the moment you stop holding it together. So you don't chase, you let go, you trust, you release, and you watch as the universe moves mountains to protect your peace. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. Yeah? So alignment begins. This is the confidence that says, I am enough. I have always been enough. And I will not shrink to be seen by small eyes. Greatness has no need to announce itself. Queens don't lower their crowns to fit in. Real diamonds don't lose their shine just because no one is looking. So why would you? Why would you dim yourself to chase what does not deserve you? Why would you run after what is too blind to see your worth? No. You rise, you pause, you wait. Because real power is in the waiting, in the patience, in the knowing that the right ones, the worthy ones, the destined ones will always find you when you are standing strong, not running desperate. And when they return, and oh, they will return, they will find you different, no longer available, no longer easy, no longer waiting. They will find a woman who chose herself, a woman who built her own peace, a woman who bloomed in silence. And they will wonder why they ever thought they could play with someone who has become the storm. The calm before the storm is beautiful, but the storm itself is unforgettable. You are that storm now. So walk with your head high. Speak less. Smile more. Move in silence. And let your success, your glow, your peace Speak the language that every fool, every betrayer, every manipulator will understand. You are no longer chasing, you are attracting. You are no longer waiting, you are arriving. You are no longer doubting, you are becoming. And the world will adjust. Because a woman who does not chase cannot be caught. She can only be met by the brave, the worthy, the real. And those are rare, just like you.